Welcome back. We're talking about inequality. Now, I want to throw a couple of numbers out at you guys. In 1965, the average CEO made 24 times what their employees made. In 2009, that number went to 185 times. The gap in wages in this country, wage inequality, has gone up drastically over the last 30 years. And in the United States today, 21% of kids live in poverty. So we're having this comparative policy or comparative poverty conversation. Well, America, we've got poverty, but it's not as bad as here. But those numbers are not okay. And inequality is not okay. And so I have to press us on this panel you got to tell me what we can do. You can't tell me that, this is the best that we can do. I just don't buy it.
I mean, maybe the conversation, I think a lot of times when people talk about addressing economic inequality, they always start at the bottom. What can we do at the bottom? The conversation probably needs to switch and say, what do we need to do at the top? Does there need to be a rule that says, hey, if you are a CEO and you cannot, it's not in good taste to make more than 20 times your highest paid employee, something of that nature to control that gap. Now, I know a lot of people will pause with that and say, well, it's America, it's capitalism, and I should be able to make as much as I want. But maybe there, in certain environments or in certain industries, maybe that does need to be the rule, because then what it does lead into that whole plantation mentality. I make all the money and you only make just enough. And then you also get into the things where people now are goaded into publicly doing all of these good deed endeavors, such as the conversation about the minimum wage, right? Get around streets, everybody's hammering in the streets. We want, what was it, $15? We want $15. Lo and behold, somebody finally announces, congratulations, I'm gonna go ahead and give $15. And I'm always the a-hole in the back of the room saying, but at what cost? Then you find out they got the $15, but now they're going to straight robots. We got the $15, but now you don't have health care.
That's Amazon,
I mean, you gotta, that's why I'm saying I get so sick and tired, of us having these conversations, and it's always this monolithic, let's find the panacea, because I think it gives those people with all of their well intentions a way to back away from the table, because it is heavy lifting. There is no panacea. It has to be a symphony of efforts, and you have to be able to use the word and. That's all I'm simply saying.
Through civic literacy, and if the voters would focus on the issues, we could control these things through the tax code. You could make it where people agree that, if you make over $5 million a year or $10 million a year, that you'll be in a bracket so high that you can keep the incentive in there for someone to still want to perform as a CEO, but not let them take all those profits.
What do you mean let them take? What country are we in here?
I think that if voters wanted to, they could control this. We focus on the wrong issues. We're worrying about issues, Roe versus Wade, things that have been decided years ago, instead of talking about these issues. You never hear these things being discussed.
Roe versus Wade is a very important
here.
issue. It talks about life itself. But the issue you're discussing is taking away from businessmen the right to be able to continue to making more incentive by making their business better, making their environment better, making their products better, which the incentive is, of course, getting more wealth.
Why not boxing up anything and ship it on the line? Come on now.
You're not necessarily taking it away from them. What happens is there's a point of diminishing return. And if we could agree that after a certain point, you could start taking a little bit more, the incentive is still there. I didn't say take it away.
Well, we have the tax system that does that for us as well.
Well, we did, and at some point during the Reagan administration, I think part of that they got rid of it.
That tax system is not in favor for the majority. That tax system is definitely in favor for the very wealthy. I'd love to be very wealthy. And take
of course it is. And I'm going to transition. Think
about it as a working mom. I noticed that I have 4 children, right? And when I do my tax returns,
you just noticed you have 4 children?
Yeah,
you just walking through the kitchen one day and you look up and it's like, how'd you get here?
Nobody will run away, right? Like, oh my God, you're still here.
It's still 4.
When you look at the taxes and when you start talking about tax refunds, right? Because that's what we understand. I don't get much back in tax refunds, and I have 4 children, but I know other people that get back more. I know other people that get back less. I mean, it's just, I understand what you're saying, that maybe there are other areas that we need to address in order to—
The tax code.
Okay,
what Trump has been doing well.
Okay, great. We're going to transition into Trump.
No, we'll see how well it is come this upcoming tax
Well, let's
return.
talk about it. He slashed corporate taxes. He slashed taxes for the rich. I'm assuming you think that's a good thing. But it provides less money for social services. You're going to have more challenges with the folks who are in the lower middle income, education, crime prevention, you name it. And so I'm always a firm believer that you can't run from poverty. Either you fix it or it's going to affect you at some point. There's nowhere to go. And so am I happy that he slashed these rates? No, not when you're talking about CEOs making 185 times what their average workers do. And just 30 years ago, that was not the case. And so this gap is getting larger.
Look,
then you get taxed for everything.
Is the incentive, would we agree, does the incentive change much when someone's making 100 million or 150 million?
What's the difference?
So I think that's a conversation people need to have and find at what point is it enough, and then after that. But you don't want to exclude people or have people fall out afterwards too. So it's more complex than just.
And this is gonna and this is gonna anger some of my more conservative friends on this. I actually agree with Obama's statement. You remember Obama made this very controversial statement years ago. You didn't build that. Do you remember that kind of statement?
Yeah.
He was
You didn't
right.
build this business, I remember.
He was right. You know why? He was very right. Because these folks who are building these businesses, yes, they have great initiative. Yes, I don't take anything from them. But they use public roads. They use public services. Many of them gone to public schools. Don't tell me that we live in isolation on an island in which what I make has nothing to do with you. Every one of us is connected. And until we understand that in this country, we're going to stay divided the way that we are, and our division is going to ultimately destroy us.
But I think a lot of times when you start having those conversations, the problem I also see is that because of identity politics, right? I hear, my conservative brother here making the arguments like, that's not fair. They should be allowed to keep what they make. But that's part of that whole aspiration politics, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to say I don't know how much you make, but I know you're not sitting here if you're making 150 million. It's just part of that whole rigmarole rat race of these aspiration politics. And
You
I'm
wouldn't
like,
be here if you make 150 million?
You never know.
Okay.
oh, okay, well, Roger.
I'm offended.
You're offended that he would be here making
No, that
100
that
million?
he would only hang out with me because he's not making, he'd have something better to do. But go ahead, I'm
If I
sorry.
was making 100 million, I would be hanging out with you either. No, just playing. Because you would want my money.
Exactly,
Nah.
exactly.
But I'm just saying that it just feeds into this larger conversation about aspiration politics. I think that's what happens when you send legislators to represent us who are not a perfect or a damn near perfect reflection of the people that they represent.
Okay.
So they have these conversations that they can't relate to, or they're easy to get into conversations where there's confirmation bias who says, yeah, that's right, $1,000, that should make everybody happy. Okay, we solved the next issue. I think that's the problem when you don't have that diverse representation.
Okay, so is Trump making this better or worse?
Some
Because
things
he
he's made
touts
it better,
he touts the
and other
unemployment
things,
numbers
no.
Some things he is making it
he
better.
touts the unemployment numbers as evidence of his success. But if you fully understand how the economy works, you recognize those numbers have been going down for years under the Obama administration. They're just continuing the trends. But let's just say maybe there is more confidence in the stock market because of him being a businessman. That's fine. But if inequality is growing, is that okay?
Again, inequality of opportunity or inequality of outcome. You need to look at the whole picture.
Okay.
What are we referring to here? Are people getting less opportunity to do things because of color, because of sex, because of background?
Okay.
Is that the case? Or is it the other end of the spectrum?
So you really believe there's equality of opportunity in America?
In some things, yes. In other things, no.
Okay.
And we need to do what we can to even out that playing field, of course. But to say everyone, like in California, had this absurd position that came up recently, a proposition. I think it came into law where every major corporation has to have a woman on its board. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Pretty soon you're going to have these actresses on the boards, people who have no opportunities at all, just to sit there for eye candy.
Yeah,
it's going to be absurd.
They'll find qualified women.
Of course
No,
not,
they
but
won't find quality.
If
Get
you
up out
can,
of
then
here.
you don't need to
I
hate the
don't-
law
Whose
for
side
it.
are you on this issue?
I'm on my side. That's whose side I'm on. Let me tell you something. It's no different than somebody saying, oh, my company's been all white, now I'm going to bring in this black dude. Oh, my company's been all male, now I'm going
Affirmative
to bring in
action
this
again,
woman.
right.
What I'm saying is that's visual. That's identity politics again. There are women who are just as racist, who are just as sexist,
You're
who are
right.
just as ridiculous. So what is the purpose of just putting a woman on there to say what? So we're not all what? We're not misogynistic?
Well, at least you have a different
I
perspective.
mean, look at what happened, how did Trump get elected? Come on now, let's keep it real.
He had a large number of women's vote. I mean, he got a
Ding
high percentage of
Ding dong.
particularly white women.
I think what it
vote.
comes down to is
It's an intellectually lazy response. Okay, I'm done.
And we're almost done too, so we got to wrap up here in a second.
my-
I'm getting that sign,
our individual response to our environment, the way things happen to us. I mean, it becomes cliche, but 90% of what happens to me is in my control.
I hear you, and I understand
That's
that.
the reality of it.
I get it. I mean, and I understand what you're saying, and you're right. However, when you have institutions that create generations of social inequality, that foster that, I think it's a little more complicated than telling people to pick themselves up by their bootstraps.
Of course.
That's
It's
true.
a lot
That
more
is
than
very
that.
true.
Yeah, and so anyway, I'll give you guys a quick last word because we've unfortunately out of time. I only got to Trump partially. Can you believe it? A
Oh,
political talk
no.
show, and we did not get a chance to talk about the issue of police brutality, which is a whole other show. I'm going to save that for our next show,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to talk about, especially being in a city like Chicago. But just final words on inequality quickly, Nick.
Well, you started with the CEOs making 185 times more now than they were making, say, 30, 40 years ago. Going back to that, you know, you look at the socialized countries, their systems work. This is a country of inventors, and greed, or has created incentive, and we will be known, in history for technology and advancements in technology due to that. So how we tweak it, how we adjust it, we have to look at that, I think, and be careful.
Khaldun?
We have to be careful about the "I'm offended" movement, which is all over the place. What I
I'm
mean
offended.
is, I'm offended that you're offended. Take a look at the proverbial lobster, right? Put it in the pot. It doesn't know that you're turning up the heat. In the same way, you have some politicians where we would rather him look me in the face, smile, while he slowly turns the pot up around me.
That's true.
Well, Trump doesn't do that. Trump tells you to your face and he turns the heat on right away. And we can't stand that because he tells us exactly what he wants to do. And people don't want to deal with that. They would rather have the guy behind the scenes doing these things. And this is what we've been used to in politics.
I'll give you that one.
I don't know. I don't know what to comment on. I just say when it comes to politics, I think these days when you're the working class, you have to choose between whether you want to get stabbed in the front or stabbed in the back.
That's very hopeful.
Well, that's a great way to end the show. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it
Happy
here
Halloween.
first. Yes. Have a wonderful day. You either get stabbed in the back or you get stabbed in the front. There's no hope. There is hope, ladies and gentlemen.
There is.
And I am a firm believer, once again, that if we can change ourselves and we can change our local communities, we can change the nation and we can change the world. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. And please watch us again as we tackle some of these important questions and conversations and move us towards a better society for everyone. Have a great day.